Hello and welcome to what I'm calling the podcast box office show. I'm Nick Hilton. I'm a podcaster, I guess, myself, and I write about podcasts. I write a newsletter called Future Proof. And this is the YouTube channel you've found yourself at. And I'm going to be doing pretty regular looks at different box offices for podcasts. So today it's going to start with the UK Apple Store front page. And maybe look at some of the charts, get a feel for that. This is it's the 6th of January 2022. So that's where we'll be starting. This is the UK Apple Store. You see it's up here. This is what it looks like. It looks like this in every country. And I'll go through some other countries in other weeks to get a feel for that. I know that Americans probably have a very different sense of what's big and what's not. But this is what it looks like. It's been like this pretty much since before Christmas. It's been a kind of slow start to the new year, but we're getting all of these nice orange things, new beginnings. So let's have a look first of all at the top shows. Let's see what's doing well at the start of the new year. Diary of a CEO, number one, and I suspect that's because there's been a lot of headlines in the last few days about this interview Stephen Bartlett's done with someone from Love Island about, their business expertise for whatever that's worth. But yeah, number one and number two, Diary of a CEO, aspirational, high performance podcast with Jake Humphrey, aspirational somehow. Then, Dropout has returned this week. Elizabeth Holmes has been found guilty, so that's returned there. I would not expect that to stay there for that much longer. But this is definitely for a start of the year kind of chart. This is definitely looking like a lot of old favourites. Parenting Hell was launched during lockdown. It's two comedians. If you don't know them, they're both kind of big panel show presences here in the UK. That's just rumbled on really well. Off Menu rumbled on really well. Again, two big, panel show guys. Chris and Rosie Ramsey, also panel show people, comedians. You can hear probably in my voice what I think of that roughly. And then just like perennial favourites, No Such Thing as a Fish, which is sort of spin-off of QI, and Happy Place, which is Fern Cotton, who used to be a Radio 1 DJ, very well-known household name here in the UK. And then this podcast, Sweet Bobby, which is made by a kind of a media brand called Tortoise. It's done really well. And yeah, it kind of continues to do really well. It was one of those ones that kind of came in kind of late in the year and then dominated most kind of year-end lists with, you can hear no trace of bitterness in my voice. But yeah, it's done really well. And it's good to see because it's a non-BBC podcast doing well in the UK. But yeah, I mean, look, you get a sense of the fact that the marketplace, certainly at the start of this year, is being dominated by either these sort of aspirational interview shows or these kind of comedian-led shows. But you get these. It's interesting, the podcasts that get cut through from different places, and the rest is history, which is Tom Holland and what's his name, Dominic Sandbrook, talking about history. I mean, that's just now in the top 10 of all podcasts in this country. I'll go through at some other point. I'll go through individual categories because Apple's categorization of podcasts is absolutely deranged, and yeah, really unhelpful to a lot of podcasts who are accurately representing what they are. That a bunch of podcasts that don't accurately represent what they are slip into the same category. But these new beginnings, again, we should read into the new beginnings what I think Apple wants to position its podcast offering as: mental health, eat well, exercise, learning, relationships. These are all kind of fitting into this broader kind of Apple Health brand. Gives them more opportunities to produce their own content, push their own content. What happens if I click listen now? New beginnings, Mental Lab, and all of these, again, all big podcasts I'd expect to be there. Eat well. Who's listening to podcasts about eating well? But yeah, it's nice to see, Lekker's a nice independent podcast, as well as, BBC shows there. Gastropod, that sounds grim. Exercise, I mean, I find this quite depressing. Also learning, I mean, Diary of a CEO, interviews with people saying, oh, I've got so much money because I worked hard and I'm so creative and clever. That's learning. I don't know. But yeah, History of the World in 100 Objects. That's an old radio program. And yeah, like History Daily is always a show that kind of launched over the last, I think probably in the last year, and has done really well. I think I've said it before, but I think learning is a really big part of what podcasting is going to become as it intersects more and more with audiobooks and other sort of media that has a more didactic presence and gamifies the process of learning. And that's why you see Duolingo there, and Blinkist has done a similar thing. If we look at top episodes, because I think this is always interesting to look at in tandem with top shows. Top is Football Weekly. This is a 2 or 3 times a week football podcast, so massively advantaged in terms of its position in the charts when a new episode comes out. Newscast again very frequently, it might even be daily. BBC news show. Let's see, 5th, 4th. Yeah, it looks like it's daily. And then the verdict on Elizabeth Holmes again. So you can see the way that current affairs and short tail podcasts do well in the top episodes, and then top shows you get a slightly more of a look at shows that have like a longer lead time. I've never even heard of this. The Donut Shop Murders just launched, and I mean, and this is the reality. I think is that look, it's so interesting. Ratings and reviews. No ratings, no reviews. 2 episodes launched. Let's go back to the chart. That's 18 in the chart. 18th biggest podcast in the country, and no one's left a rating or review. Which I guess speaks to the way that Apple biases its podcast in favor of new podcasts. They've said before that rating and reviews don't factor into the algorithm that makes the chart. I don't know. It's inscrutable. They say that, so people are inclined to believe them, but I am a little bit surprised. I think that even if ratings and reviews don't, maybe the amount of traffic going towards the Apple page of said podcast has some contributing factor, because certainly my kind of anecdotal experience has been that when people surge towards a podcast and leave ratings and leave reviews, you do get a bump in the charts, but you certainly get a huge bump when you launch, and it's crazy to me. I don't know. I mean, look, this is Trooper Entertainment, who I've never heard of, in association with Wondery. Now, Wondery obviously have a good relationship with Apple and the curators there, because it's all, their podcasts are always featured quite prominently in the carousel. At the top, you go, Tortoise. Don't know who makes that. Don't know who makes that. This is not so. It's not so good if I can't tell you who makes them. NASA. I don't know. But all of these companies like The Athletic and and Wonder and places tend to be featured on this. Sometimes they have this kind of bar down here, which they've swapped out for curated collections at the moment, looking at places like Wondery, places like Slate, Times, LBC, Campside, who produce a high volume of big prestige podcasts, and therefore get their own little box that's often on the front page, and whether it makes me sound like a conspiracy theorist, but whether Wondery have a conversation with Apple, they're launching this new podcast, the Donut Shop Murders or whatever, and will it go into the charts and carousel splash? I don't know. I don't know how these things work, because I tend not to have these conversations. New seasons. Let's see what's launching a new season then. In oh, look, my podcast is there. That new season was new in July. So not that if anyone from Apple is listening to this, not that I want it taken away, but yeah. I mean, British Scandal does a new season about every 2 months. It's been going since April, and it's on season. We're on Lord Lucan, Anarchy in the UK, Canoe Con, Perfumer Affair, Bearings, Breaking Bearings, Sexed Up, Dossier, Murdoch, Litvinenko. So, I mean, they're going to be perpetually in new seasons by the looks of things. Yeah, I mean, my instinct is that no one clicks on this. But it's interesting, more importantly, to see this page and to see the shows that are probably objectively doing well. They're getting traffic. And we'll look at Spotify charts on a different video. But This is like, in a way, the Apple podcast charts is like the purest chart. It's the first thing that people think of when they think of a podcast chart. And, any podcast in the top 100 should be doing well in any country, however small. So all of these podcasts are doing well, but you do see a distinct trend towards these sort of influencer, sort of comedian shows. The podcasting, which I guess is, for some people think of it as being, true crime. There's this idea that Serial reinvented the podcast, and that's what people kind of want from it. But you've got a couple of documentaries up here. You've got a radio documentary here. This mysterious thing that seems to be there somehow. Hunting Ghislaine, that's a documentary. Harsh Reality, that's a documentary. Forgive me if I'm missing anything. Then you've got things like Case File and Crime Junkie, which is sort of anthologized, and I don't call, they're not documentaries, nor is British Scandal, but they tell stories. They're storytelling podcasts. But the vast majority of this is interview shows, and yeah, I mean, I don't mean to be cynical about it, but so many of these shows are so similar, and that might just be because market demand. People want the same show and they want it over and over again. But it does feel quite stagnant, and I'll be interested when I next come back to look at the UK Apple Store in however many weeks or whatever, to see how much change there's been, how much churn there's been. This podcast has gone from strength to strength in the last year. Whether it will still be top of the charts if there's not a big splashy interview that's just been released. I can't believe that many people want to listen to Jake Humphrey, but whether this will be top of the charts in a few weeks, who knows how much movement there'll be, especially as new shows get launched, because no one is launching a show on New Year's Day. But I imagine that many people were planning an early 2022 release. And so we'll see what the first new shows in 2022 to really break into this area are. But yeah, it will rely to some extent on Apple curating this, because I think they added screenshot to their new and noteworthy roster, if I remember correctly, and I check this quite often. I think they did that before Christmas, and then they added Loneliness after, because it came out, or they did a special issue, here on the 29th, that kind of refashioned this Broccoli documentaries. And Broccoli have, I think, a very good relationship with Apple, and their podcasts always do well on the rotation. So I think that is the only one that's been added in the last week. They usually add about to the UK store about 5 or 6 new podcasts a week to New and Noteworthy, and then switch up these things. So Must Watch, so they're going for a TV thing at the moment, when TV recap podcast got. Yeah, you can subscribe to the newsletter Futureproof by going to futureproofnews.substack.com/subscribe. There'll be a link in the description of this episode, and it's £3.50 a month to subscribe to, and £30 for the year, which is about as cheap as Substack. It's literally as cheap as Substack will let you make it. And it's just a way of supporting this content on YouTube, and the content that I write on Medium. Go to nickfthilton.medium.com or search for Pod Culture on Medium. All of those things are going to be supported financially by the Substack Futureproof. So yeah, I hope you subscribe, even if you don't desperately need another newsletter email, because I don't need another newsletter email, and I appreciate that you might not either. But if you want to support broadly the content, which is looking at and interrogating digital media, its future, podcasts, but not just podcasting, and look at more at streaming video, digital video, streaming audio, all of these things that kind of whatever the next iteration, the next incarnation of media is going to look like, we're going to get to the bottom of it and try and get there early. But do support that by going to futureproofnews.substack.com. Anyway, till next time.